Well, okay, guys, this is what you want to know. Let's make some topiary magic. Now, it seems to me from the feedback that I get from you guys, most of the time when you're starting out in the topiary world, your first project is going to be with a boxwood because that's the classical medium, I think, for topiary, historically and now. It is very forgiving, it's inexpensive, very difficult to, I think, mess up, and you get instant gratification most of the time. So here are the things to look for. Again, I'm going to design this topiary from beginning to end. So I'm starting out with this gray pot. I have in mind kind of what the final composition will look like, and this gray pot, this gray clay pot, is going to be a part of that. Now, I went to my garden center. You can go to Lowe's, you can go to Home Depot, you can go to any independent nursery, you can go just about anywhere. You can even shop your own garden. You can even take castaways from a neighbor or a friend. But basically what you're looking for is a boxwood that will make a good topiary candidate. Sometimes I like to look at the end of the season when their plants are on sale, because that's when you will find some that are a little bit less than their best. They may be a little bit straggly, and ironically, sometimes it's the misshapen lonely orphans that make the best candidates for topiary. So this is a Green Mountain boxwood. I've mentioned a number of times that this is one of my very favorite varieties. It's what those huge boxwood balls are on standards that are in my back garden. I really love this variety. But don't let that keep you from researching or trying really any other variety. The only one that I would be a little bit hesitant about is probably English boxwood, for a number of reasons I won't go into right now. They're very sweet. They will kind of already look like topiary, but they do have some issues. Again, I won't go into that right now, but even an English boxwood, go for any kind of boxwood that speaks to you and calls out your name when you go to the store. So this one is a perfect example. So I saw this one yesterday, and what I looked for was one that had, and pretty much I always do this, a good strong central stem. Periodically I will find one that might have, well, I don't have an example here, but might have two good stems, but they've got a very vertical pattern of growth, very vertical orientation. This one, if I kind of pull back its hair, you can see that it's got a good strong central stem. So that's why I selected this one. And then I'm just going to get to work. So like any plant, okay, look, this is relatively pot bound. You can see how congested all of these roots are. So I'm going to do the same thing with this that I did with the lavender, only I'm going to be maybe a little bit more aggressive with it because these roots are a little bit tougher. And another thing, guys, is I really made sure this was extremely well hydrated before I put it through this kind of trauma. So I really soaked this very well. Now in this case, I'm not going to remove any of the bottom. I'm just going to tease out and loosen up those roots. So you can see now how I have liberated all of those guys, and they'll be able to grow out into the surrounding soil. And it's particularly important in this pot because it is larger and I want it to put on some growth. So I already had a little bit of backfill in here, some garden debris that I put at the bottom to make sure that when I potted this, it would sit at soil level. Usually I do it just a tiny bit below soil level to accommodate whatever mulch I'm going to put on top. And then I'm just taking my good quality garden soil and I am putting it around. Now you might say, okay, so you're going to pot it before you clip it. How important is that? Honestly, it doesn't really make any difference. In this case, I want to pot it because the shape of the plant itself will be informed by the size, the scale, and the shape of this beautiful gray pot. So in this case, I am going to pot it up first. Now I'll pot it up, but I'm not going to mulch it yet. And the other thing I did was moisten my garden soil before I put it in here, so that it's malleable and I can kind of compress it down. Okay, so that was easy. That took no time at all. Again, I'm going to take my gloves. Don't ever waste really good muck on your garden gloves. Okay, so I've done that. Okay, now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a really good look over and see if it's straight and see how it speaks to me. You may have heard that a sculptor says that the finished work of art is already in a piece of marble. Well, that's kind of what I think about topiary. There is a topiary form that I want hidden in this shrub. Okay, so now I'm going to have to take off my garden gloves for this more precise clipping. So I've got some of my favorite clippers here, and I can see that this lower one right here needs to be removed. Now I could clip that off, or I could tear it off like I did, because I want a little bit of the stem and of the trunk to be attached to this piece, because I'm going to save this piece and try to make another topiary out of it, because you can see its potential to have a really good strong central stem. It would make a great candidate for a small topiary. Then I'm just going to look and see how high up I want to elevate the canopy or the growth of the shrub itself. So at this point, I think it's where people get a little scared, because they've got this pretty shrub with all of this greenery on it, and they're not really sure how much of it they feel comfortable taking off. There really isn't a wrong way to do it. You just need to be brave. If you're not sure, get a glass of wine, enjoy some liquid courage, and then go for it. Because it's, again, you can't really do it wrong. It will grow out no matter what you do to it. So I'm then going to kind of eyeball it, and I think some of the lower stems I'm going to take off, because I want more of the trunk exposed. Now, a boxwood topiary can have a very tall trunk like this one. You'll see here that it's got a tall trunk, and I've removed a lot of the lower branches. Or it can have a short trunk like this tiny one I started that needs a haircut, but it's a little bit stubbier, and I like them of all heights. I like them of all sizes, and I also like the layering effect that you get when you have different topiary plantings of various heights. So this one, I think I'm going to go, okay, help me decide here, you guys. What would you do? I could take these off and start the ball right here. I could start the ball right here, leaving only about 2 inches of the trunk itself. This is where your creativity comes in. So I think I'm going to leave this with perhaps a rather short trunk. Okay, so now I'm going to start clipping. If you're frightened, then just be as conservative as possible. You know, they say that you can always take off more, but you can't put it back on. So that's a good reason to start out kind of conservatively. So I'm going to start out with this piece right here, because it obviously is an outlier. I'm going to save this again for future topiary. Then I'm just going to start clipping until I get a semblance of a ball form. This is so relaxing, you guys. I just, it's one of my favorite things to do. it may be mindless, but it's also creative because you can do different shapes. I saw a shape, now that I think about it, that I really liked. That was the shape of a portobello mushroom today, where it was basically flat on the bottom with just a dome. But this one, I think, I just have to keep clipping until it tells me what it wants to be. And I love it when you make just that, those certain cuts that kind of expose what it is you're going for. Okay, so this one here is going to be my crucial cut, I can tell. Again, really good material for starting future boxwoods. Okay, so this one, I think I want to have kind of an upright chalice shape. And I might even make it a little bit flat on the top. I could easily turn this into a ball. I'm going to remove, do I want to remove that one? I think I want to remove these. I'm going to leave that one. And then you'll see that there are just some lone leaves down here. I'm going to take those off. And the important thing to remember is this is a process that evolves over time. Yes, you get some immediate gratification, but it is something that the shape, as the growing season progresses, your plant will grow, and over time it will start looking more the way you want it to look. Okay, I am actually going to take that one off. And I am getting kind of a nice form. The other thing is, you might decide later to take off more. As it grows out, you can see where you need more symmetry, where you need more balance. And that's another reason to maybe be a little bit more conservative from the beginning. But you can see, Stuart, can you see? Can you see that I have liberated the form of this topiary, and I have a good strong trunk. Now I do, if I'm going to do this kind of clipping, I typically do it before I top dress it, or if it's already topped dressed with gravel and I'm doing my kind of custodial pruning, then I'll cover it with a rag or something so that all of those clippings don't fall into my pretty mulch on top. The only way you know you're finished is kind of when you run out of time. And I think I like the way this is looking right now. I have identified some that I might want to take off later, like this one or this one, but for right now, I'm pleased with the way it looks. That took absolutely no time at all, and I took a gallon, let me see, this was a gallon 898 Green Mountain boxwood from the garden center, and I made a topiary that if I bought it already in this form at a nursery or at a florist would have cost 2 to 3 times as much. Now, for my final touch, what I'm going to do is put my gloves back on, because it's these kinds of detailed appointments that really, I think, makes topiary fun and put it over the top. I've got this gorgeous black gravel here that looks beautiful, I think, against this clay pot. Now, it's a gray clay pot, so I'm kind of color matching. And this happens to be a mix of 2 different sizes of gravel, one very small, one larger. I can't remember, I think I maybe got this at, some of it at Home Depot, some of it at Michael's. I'm always on the lookout for things that might be a good candidate to top dress my topiaries. And there, this would look great in a really modern setting. You could even bring this indoors temporarily. And there you go. Doesn't it look great? I'm very pleased. I have a finished topiary in under 10 minutes, under 15 minutes, under 15 minutes, and I think it looks really wonderful. And now for some final thoughts.